This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Associated Lightning Rod and Thorin Designs.
Well, hello, Mary. How are you today?
Thorin, I am fine on this frosty February morning.
Well, this episode is not going to come out in February, though.
No, it'll be coming out in the spring, and I'm super excited because we have a great guest today.
We do.
And I want to shout out Sarah Getz, who was a previous guest on this podcast, and she suggested our next guest, and his name is Clem Loew. Mm-hmm. He is a yogi in Sarah's class where I first interacted with him.
Okay.
But he is a childhood survivor of the Holocaust, and he has a very fascinating story to tell. He's also a psychologist and a psychoanalyst.
Oh, wow.
He and 4 other individuals founded the National Institute of Psychotherapies based out of Manhattan, which trains and treats people who might not be able to afford therapy.
Okay.
And he is also an artist and a memoirist. His memoir is called When the Birds Stop Singing, and he is a sculptor and a portrait photographer.
He sounds like a Renaissance man.
He does, and I think he's going to have a lot to say about Moxie, and I'm excited to just get into it with him.
Let's do it. Did you know that 1 out of 200 homes are struck by lightning each year? Lucky for us, Rob Cooper and his entire team at Associated Lightning Rod is here to help protect your home and mine. They install lightning protection on both residential and commercial structures and have over 60 years of experience.
They offer free estimates and inspections because lightning protection is not a DIY project. This one should be left to the experts.
So to learn more, you can visit www.alrci.com, or you can call them today for that free estimate at 518-789-4603. Clem, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out to me.
Well, we're excited. We're excited. And our first question is always, how would you define Moxie?
I'd like to give you an example of Moxie.
Sure.
It's okay. In London, a while back, a teacher was teaching, I think, 6-year-olds to draw. And she said, you have 20 minutes. You can do whatever you want. You can draw whatever you want. After 20 minutes, she says, okay, let's all stop. Now let's look what you drew. There's a girl in the back still drawing. So the teacher comes over to her and says, what are you drawing? And you're supposed to stop. And she says, I'm drawing a picture of God. And the teacher says, well, that's interesting. Nobody knows what God looks like. And the little girl says, they will when I finish. So
that's a good one.
That's Moxie.
Yes. Yes.
That's as good a Moxie as I know.
Yes.
It certainly is.
So how do you see that kind of, in that story, I'm hearing someone going to the beat of their own drum, creating something out of nothing. How does that fit in with your life?
Well, I have to say that I attribute most of my Moxie to my mother. My mother was about 27 years old. I was 3 when the war started. And it's her Moxie that saved both of our lives.
Mm-hmm. And this is World War II.
This is World War II. And she, to me, was like a Jewish James Bond. She evaded the Nazis. She hid. She disguised herself. Luckily, she was very pretty. Mm-hmm. And she did not look Jewish. So it was easy for her. We had false papers. So it was easy for her to get through and identify herself as, as a different person with different birth certificates. Mm-hmm. I also had false papers, but as you can maybe guess, very few boys survived because while she as a woman can get by and say, well, I'm not Jewish, look at me. Here are my papers. I, as a boy, can show them the papers, but what they can do is ask me to take my pants down. and see if I'm circumcised. So the circumcision gives away that you're Jew. In those days, only Jews were circumcised. Now some are, some aren't, So she had to be very careful not to expose me to the Gestapo. And just give an idea of how much moxie she had. We were at a railroad station waiting for get on the train, and there was a whole bunch of Gestapos coming down saying, I hear there are Jews here.
Oh, jeez.
And my mother knew that if they saw me, she and I would be dead. So she went to the bathroom, a woman's bathroom, and went to a stall and sat there waiting for the Gestapo to pass. So one Gestapo comes into the bathroom. A guy comes into the bathroom, and she starts screaming with kind of arrogance, how dare you come into a woman's bathroom? Get out. And I'm standing on top of the toilet seat. And she said, well, I'm looking for Jews. I heard there were Jews here. There are no Jews here. Get out. And this is a woman's bathroom. How dare you come in here? And the guy left. That's an example how she saved me.
Right.
Wow.
So there was a lot of moxie on her part. And the biggest moxie, which I think you'd be most interested in, she, after a while, placed me in a convent. And it was a Catholic convent outside of Warsaw. And they were very, very good to me. They saved my life. I was there 2 years. Mm-hmm. There were only 3 Jews among 20 children who were deposited there for safekeeping during the war. Mm-hmm. And while I was in the convent, my mother, who I said was very pretty with her Catholic papers, went to get a job in Warsaw. And you won't believe the job she got. She got a job as a nanny to a Gestapo family. Do you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah. So they assumed she was not Jewish, of course. Didn't look at it. She had papers. And I wasn't there. I'm a giveaway.
Right.
And she worked there for 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. And she would stroll down the avenue in Warsaw with a carriage and then a German shepherd that she befriended. Who would ever suspect that she's anything but a nanny?
Right.
for somebody. So she worked there for 2 years. And after the war ended, she came to pick me up in the convent. That's how I survived most of the war.
So you didn't see her for that whole 2 years?
She would visit me occasionally.
Right.
And just to show you how desperate everybody was for food, she had food because the Gestapo had food. Mm-hmm. But the convent had very little food. We were really near starvation. The nuns gave us as much as they could. They were very kind, very protective. So when she come visit me sometimes on Sunday, she would steal 2 eggs, hard-boiled eggs, and I remember sharing them with some of my friends. We'd cut up slices of the egg. That was like eating a huge delicacy.
Right.
Because, eggs and potatoes were the basic source of nutrients. And that's what she did. She would bring couple of eggs sometimes. I would split up and we would eat that. And then she'd go back to work. In the convent, should I tell you a little bit about the convent?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Because I think it's interesting. In the convent, like I said, they're all very kind to me. They knew I was Jewish. There were only 3 Jews among, I think, about 20 kids. I learned Catholic prayers. I went to church. I found it very warm and accepting and safe. I loved Jesus on the cross. I loved Mary, statue of Mary. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, the nun that took to me as a kind of her son, so to speak, gave me a job of dusting the church, the cathedral. Mm-hmm. And I would dust it like every day. And I got to be very fond of Mary. And I would dust her especially. And, I was very little. I was only maybe 5 years old, 6 years old. So I would dust Mary, and I would feel very wonderful to be close to this person and the spiritual person. I found a lot of safety and guidance coming from her. And Lena was the nun that took to me. I think I was her favorite. She is the one that saved me from the Gestapo a couple of times, because Gestapo come into the convent saying, I hear you're hiding Jews. And so one time, I was lucky I got away with it. And she threw me under the bed, and Gestapo looked around, and they just didn't see anybody. But the second time they came around, they looked under the bed and they saw me and they dragged me out. And they dragged me like I was a carcass, you know? Mm-hmm. They dragged me by my feet, first my head on the other end, and went through the door. And just as they were going to take me out, the priest, a retired priest who lived in the convent, I remember stood up on top of the stairs and said, "Stop, let him go. You can't take him. If you take him, you have to take me." And usually they would say, "I don't give a damn, I'll take you too," you know. But for some lucky reason for me, they dropped me like a lead balloon and they left. That was the closest call I had.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, that was pretty close. Get jitters. And since that time, as you can imagine, I have been very fond of nuns.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah, whenever I see nuns, like when I walk the streets of New York, I see nuns, I always say hello. They don't know why I'm saying hello.
Well, they will after this podcast.
Okay, that's great. That's how I survived most of the time.
Right. And you and your mother were reunited.
Yes. After the war, it's another interesting story because the Gestapo guy asked my mother they were retreating. The Russians were coming from the east and the Germans were retreating back to Germany. And the Gestapo said to her, "I want you to come with us. You've been very good.
Oh, boy.
You've been a very good nanny. My child likes you, blah, blah. You come with us." She said, "Well, let me think about it. I don't know." And that night, this is how the Moxie that I'm talking about, that night, she left, in the middle of the night, she left the house. She escaped because she knew if she didn't leave, they would force her to go back or they will find her identity somehow.
Right.
You know, and she did not want to tell them, "Oh, my son's in the convent. I have to pick him up."
Right.
You know, so there's another example how she escaped. Middle of the night, she left that house. And then she made her way through to get me later on in the convent.
And when did you come to the States?
I came here May of 1949 on a troop transport.
Okay. With your mother?
With my mother.
Yeah. Just the two of you?
The two of us. The only other survivor was my mother's brother who stayed behind in Munich and went to medical school there.
Right.
After they came here, he was a pediatrician, a wonderful pediatrician in Chicago.
Okay.
Were you in Warsaw for those 3 years, from 45 through 49?
Yes, I was in Warsaw. There was what's called DP camp, a displaced person camp. And they were for the purpose of all displaced persons, mostly Jews, from all the Eastern European countries. And these DP camps were on the German barracks and German stations prior to the war, you know. And so, we stayed in the barracks for about 2 years, and then moved to Munich. And my mother got a job with the UN.
Okay.
And we applied for visas. And so, we got visas to go to, I think, Australia, Israel. She did not want to go to Israel because she said, "I had enough of war. I want to go to a peaceful place." And I think Argentina, I'm not sure. Anyway, and America. So she chose U.S. And that's so we came in 49.
How was it when the Russians came and, kind of took over Poland for a while there while the war was ending? How was that living there compared to before?
Well, the Russians were liberated. I was liberated by the Russians. And we were so happy, obviously. But in the convent, we were hiding. They put us in the basement because the Russians thought that we were Germans.
Oh, okay.
Hiding in this building. So they started bombarding us with cannons.
Oh, my God.
So the nuns put us in the basement. I think it used to be a horse's stall because there was a lot of hay on the ground. And luckily for us, the windows were covered with stone because there was a direct hit of a shell right at the window. And the kids that were with me in that stall got blown back across the hall. When the Russians came, we were all very happy. They were liberating us. By the way, the nun it was very brave. She went when they were shooting at us. Then I went out with a white towel, waved it at them to tell them, that we're surrendering, whatever, and that. So they came in with guns and bayonets, and they were fierce. I remember that they stabbed the hay with bayonets to make sure that no German soldiers hiding in there, and very scary, frankly, even though they were liberating me. It was very scary. Them coming in with bayonets and stuff, and they were brutal. I mean, I'm glad they were brutal because they liberated us.
Right.
But that's how we were liberated.
Wow.
I'm curious about how I feel like most people go through their lives kind of in the bell curve of most things, and you and your family go through what is like the most awful aspects of humanity. And then you're also experiencing the most noble aspects of humanity, like on polar ends. And how do you marry that or think about that? Maybe not as a 6 or 7 year old, but in reflection over time. How do you come to terms with that?
How do you even process that? When you're talking, as a 6 and 7 year old, I'm thinking of my daughter who's 6 and imagining her in your position, or even, thinking back to when I was 6 and, this is just, I can't even wrap my brain around it. So to go with what you're saying, how do you even process that?
That's such a wonderful question, really. I got a lot of love from my mother. I was obviously a PTSD experience.
Right.
And that's been with me for a lot of my life. I turned to psychology probably because of my own PTSD.
Right.
Many psychologists do that. They turn to psychology to fix themselves, which is fine, but that helps them to understand other people better.
Right.
So I've dealt with my PTSD by being in therapy for a long time. And I was lucky enough to make friends easily. I always had a couple of best friends, good friends, like brothers. And that helped me. My mother's love and devotion helped me. And I think my mother's bravery, my mother's go-to and survival instincts helped me to choose my own career and go to places maybe where other people have not gone, so to speak. I think of being brave as going somewhere we have not been before. I hate the imagery of Star Trek, but it's a little bit like that.
Right.
So I feel like I have been handling my PTSD most of my life.
So I read a lot about this concept of intergenerational trauma. And I was talking to Thorne before. I try to pay attention to mindfulness and living in the moment, and the past is in the past, and you can go forward and create and live in the moment. And I feel like that works for a lot of things, like if you had a particularly bad exchange the day before that you wish you could undo and you can't, you just have to kind of say, okay, tomorrow's a new day. I can only try to do better.
Yes.
But when you have this intergenerational experience, negative experience, like baked into your DNA.
Right.
And you're marinating in it from your parents, from your mother. How do you let go of that past? Because sometimes I wonder if you even know how it's affecting you.
That's a profound statement, a profound question you're raising. I really appreciate it. You transmit the trauma. First of all, when you have that kind of trauma, the blood system is different. You have cortisol elevations in your system.
Okay.
Because of the trauma. And children, I told my children about my past. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They're architects. I'm very proud of them. The children sense from you something is awry, maybe because you have a temper, maybe because you look down sometimes. And I told them they know about my experience. I told them about it. And so my daughter was a little more, in the beginning, a little more open to it. My son was difficulty absorbing it and, putting it in perspective. But I'm sure in some ways they are suffering from it. I'm not sure how, because they've put good lives, accomplished people. I have 2 grandchildren, lovely, but it happens. Sometimes the Holocaust survivor is unaware of the impact they're making. But I did want to say this, it makes me think, if you don't mind, of something that I wanted to talk about, which is humiliation.
Okay.
I think the biggest consequence of being a Holocaust survivor, including myself as a child, is shame.
Yeah.
How so?
You're afraid to show yourself.
Oh.
Your daughter goes out and says, hey, and they run, and she says hello and, kisses and hugs anybody who comes by,
right.
Like my dog does. You are trained to hide yourself. I have a long nose, so here I could be Spanish, I suppose, maybe Italian, but there I'm a Jew.
Right.
So when my mother and I traveled on a train, she put a mask on me. In the winter especially, she put a mask and like pretending that it's very cold out to hide my nose. It's a real giveaway. So hiding, can you imagine how I have to hide myself? It makes me feel like shame and humiliation to be who I am. Because who I am is dangerous and very shaming. And that's the biggest hurdle in my entire life that I've had to overcome, shame and humiliation. And I would say in terms of your podcast, that Moxie, I think we all have a Moxie in us. I think what often prevents people from using their Moxie and paying attention to their Moxie is shame. There's a shame about, well, I wish to do this. Well, I don't know. I won't be good at it, and it's not right. And you make all kinds of excuses not to do something or not to go after your hope, all because of shame. And I think shame and humiliation is the biggest obstacle to one's exercising one's Moxie.
That sounds like it fits.
Doesn't
you
it?
Can't be fully present, fully yourself if you're trying to hide it, or you've been made to feel less than.
Yes.
Less than human for large parts of your life.
Yes.
So what techniques have you've gone to therapy, but how have you kind of manifested getting over that shame? Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but how do you act it to cast off the shame? What do you do? Self-talk or?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking it. We're not letting you off the hook here.
In addition to being in therapy, you really try to be more assertive, and you're very conscious and mindful of you inhibiting yourself. So you want to say something and you say, no, I shouldn't because it's going to be embarrassed this, embarrassed that. And you don't say anything. So you kind of catch yourself. Wait a minute, you're just embarrassed about what? So you say something, they don't like it, tough.
Right.
No, they'll tell you that.
Yeah.
No huge deal.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, self-talk is a good phrase to be able to overcome one's shame of oneself. And I imagine that anybody who has trouble using their Moxie, you don't have to go through a Holocaust to have shame and embarrassment about yourself, or self-consciousness about yourself. Anybody who wants to kind of circumnavigate their shame needs to be aware of it and talk to oneself. There's no reason for me to be ashamed of this. I am good, I'm fine, I'm entitled to feel or think this way.
Right.
I'm entitled to say, I like blue, I hate green. I'm entitled to say that. And I'm entitled to pick the partner I want.
Right.
I like this partner. Well, yeah, but she is, I don't know, when she was young, she did pot and she drugs and, and she's got this fault and that fault. I wouldn't go with her. Yeah, but I want to go with her. And I like her. And it's up to me to decide that. And you have to kind of talk to yourself so you can get out of your shameful feelings, and you're in a group of people. I think that's often hard. You take a chance on being embarrassed because you may say something stupid. But I think part of Moxie is being able to say something stupid, because you can never be brilliant. You can never be always brilliant, I should say.
Right.
You can never be always right, but you do always have a right, and should tell yourself, I have a right to express my view and my opinion, even if the 10 other people don't like it.
And is part of that being okay with that? That you're okay with not being right all the time or looking stupid or, having the confidence to say whatever it is on your mind? Yes,
I think yes. And have the confidence that you may get some pushback.
Right. And that's okay.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Right.
If you never get pushback, you're not doing anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's a T-shirt.
I like that. It's a T-shirt.
Thoren Designs knows your next big marketing idea could be huge for your business and its future. Talk to them about your business's design and marketing needs. They're here to help with graphic design, branding, book design, websites, social media, and more. You can find them at www.thorendesigns.com or follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Thoren Designs.
Can I ask you, did your mother also need or go to therapy as well to kind of process what she also went through?
Unfortunately, she never did.
Okay.
No, she did not. I don't know why. She when I was in high school, she took me for a therapeutic consult with a psychiatrist in Columbia, in New York, but she never went. And that consult with a psychiatrist was a total waste, and it was very bad. Just to briefly, that was in the 50s, I guess. I was in high school. Most psychiatrists and psychologists were using Freudian theory and Freudian frameworks to work with patients.
Oh, okay.
So so this guy was such a jerk.
How do you really feel about him?
Don't get me started.
I won't.
He heard my story about the Holocaust.
Okay.
And everything. And end of the session, he says, look, you're a normal kid. Nothing wrong with you. The problem you have is sex. You need to go and have sex with somebody.
Oh my God. This sounds like the Alan Arkin character in Little Miss Sunshine.
I should have said to him, how about a script?
Yeah.
Give me a script. I'll take it to a girl and show her the script.
Yeah, right. My prescription.
Doctor's orders.
Sex 2 times a day. So I take it that's not your MO as a therapist. About that, what is the difference? This is a kind of off topic. What is the difference between a psychologist and a psychoanalyst? Like, you're both. What does that mean?
Okay, good question. So I'm a psychologist. I have a PhD in psychology. Then you also have a psychiatrist who has an MD from medical school.
Okay.
He can prescribe medicine. I cannot.
Sex.
I can prescribe sex too, actually. Not medicine. Psychoanalysis is training you get after you graduate.
Okay.
It's a form of treatment. It's psychiatrists can become psychoanalysts, and psychologists can become psychoanalysts. It's a way of seeing people and a way of treating people that has more depth to it and takes into account history, takes into account your whole being, and it's much deeper and wider and more substantial than other kinds of treatments.
Okay. And you are a co-founder of the National Institute of Psychotherapies.
Yes.
And that trains professionals and provides mental health services to people who might not be able to afford it?
Correct.
How did that come about? What does that fill in your life that you felt the need to start that?
Well, actually, a friend of mine, it was started by their 4 co-founders. Can I say the name?
Sure.
There's one is
we do shout outs.
Okay. On Dr. Fasagi and Dr. Ken Frank. And the idea of this institute came from a friend. His name is Henry Grayson. And the four of us got together, this was in the 60s, and decided that Freudian way of dealing with things, Freudian would be like the guy who had a counsel with, who told me to go have sex. So Freudian doesn't really work. It's not really beneficial. What works is the whole mind, the whole body, and the relationships you have with people. Relationship you had with your parents, relationship you had with your husband, your lover, your friend. That's what we need to focus on. So the analysis developed into a drive, that we have a drive for relationships. In contrast to Freud, that said we have a drive for sex and aggression. Mm-hmm. And while, yes, sex and aggression are instinctive, but our primary drive is to search for relationships. Mm-hmm. And the search for relationships is key. And it's also key how well a child grows up. How well a child grows up depends on how much emotional attunement the parent provides to their child.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the emotional attunement is like oxygen to a child. Mm-hmm. We all as children, we also as adults, but as children, we need that attunement to provide us with oxygen for growth, psychological growth. And that is most important.
And what exactly does attunement mean? Attention, focus, what?
Yeah, all of that. It means being sensitive to a child's emotional inner life. Mm-hmm. It means reflecting and caretaking a child's emotional life. So, for example, a little girl comes back from school and, someone, she failed and so someone punched her or something. Mm-hmm. And so one way, of course, is to, okay, let me fix you up and put the Band-Aid on you. You're okay now? All right, great. You're not really hurt. You're fine. But the emotional attunement comes with how to ask the child, what was that like? How are you feeling about this getting hit? Mm-hmm. Are you okay with it? Tell me about it. I'll give you a hug. Mm-hmm. That's emotional attunement, to kind of tune in to the inner life of the child, mm-hmm. not just the behavior of the child.
So my response of get up and stop crying was not emotional attunement. No, I did plenty of attunement, I'm sure.
No, we all do that. We all, as parents, we all do a spectrum of attunements and cut the shit, will you?
Well, it's a fine line. You have to do a little bit of both. And, my daughter came home off the bus yesterday with an ice pack and she's like, oh, I had a thing. I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, I fell and they gave me an ice pack. And I'm like, are you okay? Yeah. I'm like, you're fine. Other days, she fell last week too. And she did actually hurt herself really bad. So, we did a hug. But, yesterday I'm like, you're fine.
Yes, that's right. But look, you gave her a hug.
Yeah.
And not just putting a Band-Aid on a knee or whatever it was. You gave her a hug, and that's being attuned to her emotions. Mm-hmm. Emotions are as important, obviously, as physical existence.
Yes. Has that been that institute? You also are in private practice. Has that institute been a large part of your professional career since the early 70s? Or late 60s?
Yes. It has been for me, and it is for hundreds of others now. It's our professional home. It's a place where we get together and talk about what we are doing. Mm-hmm. We share our experiences. We supervise other people. We get supervised ourselves by colleagues. I have an issue with a patient. You're my colleague. I come to you. Hey, this is what happened. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should say? So it's a place where we share our life together, and it's a very emotional place because therapists tend to be a little more emotionally engaged than, let's say, engineers.
A box of tissues on every table.
Now, are you located in New York, or is it now, especially everything's gone to Zoom, is it more global, the institute, and how you work with each other and patients?
Yeah, I have my own private practice, mm-hmm. which is mine, and that's what I'm doing now. That's how I earn my living, mm-hmm. and that's what I love to do. Mm-hmm. And the practice is all right now, it's all on Zoom. I have an office at the Institute on 23rd and 6th in Manhattan. It's a wonderful office, and the Institute is a wonderful place because patients go there, get treatment. Students go there to get training, and we train people from all over the country, actually, that come to us through our national training program. But my practice is my own practice, yes. And right now, it's all on Zoom.
Okay.
And so far, no one's really asked. One person once asked for live, but no one complains because, you go to therapy, it takes, in Manhattan anyway, it takes you 45 minutes to get there. Well, that's a half hour, right? Subway, cab, whatever. You spend 45 minutes in the session, then it takes you another half hour, 45 minutes, half a day's gone.
Right.
And on Zoom, it's 45 minutes.
Right.
From the comfort of your own couch.
Yeah, come from your own couch.
I want to switch to your creative pursuits.
By the way, can I just interject you
go ahead.
before I forget? I don't know this. I don't know if you know this, but there's a NASA hooked up with Walt Disney and created a AI doll called Moxie.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. And it's a cute little thing, and it's like a therapy doll. So it soothes you, it talks to you. You should look it up.
I will look it up.
Called Moxie.
We'll get it for Christmas for each other.
It's very expensive. I don't know.
So speaking of creativity, you published a book in 2014, When the Birds Stopped Singing.
Yes.
Which was Living with the Wounds of War, Personal Essays. So you're a writer, a memoirist.
Yes.
And you also do sculpture and take portrait photography.
Yes.
So what have those creative pursuits, how have they helped you grow or recover or self-soothe from anxiety, or what role do they play?
Okay, another nice question. I just love artistic things, and I love taking pictures, and I love to sculpt. My wife, by the way, sculpts in stone. She's like really good because stone is it's impossible because
unforgiving.
When you do clay, if something goes wrong, you chop it off, you plop something else on. If you have to do clay. Your daughter probably does clay. Right. In stone, once you chip it, gone.
Oops.
Good. She's very good.
Maybe this won't be a male figure anymore.
I like that. So it's a way of exploring one side of you that is really important for all of us to do something creative, and people do all kinds of things, creatively.
Do you feel a sense of freedom when you're doing artistic inspired things?
Yeah, artistic things and memoir writing is extraordinarily therapeutic for me. As you can imagine, because you're really working something through. Right. Especially when you're writing. And frankly, I get up often like around 2, 3 in the morning and sneak out of bed. And my wife says, "Where are you going?" So I'm going to my computer and I write. And sometimes I write things that comes to mind, things you never thought would come. Yeah. Kind of free associating when you're being creative. And it's often very therapeutic. It's relieving. Mm-hmm. Like right now, I'm writing something about my father and what it would have been like if he had been alive, and seeing my grandkids and so on. And just writing about it in my imagination is like working something through of my loss, right, of him, and it's creating an experience of having him here. Present with me. So it's that kind of stuff that goes on in one's creativity. And people have different experiences, of course.
Right, of creativity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it give you a different reflection of it or a different viewpoint when you read back what you've written? I like to have things sit for a bit after I write them. And so when I come back, I view it from a different perspective sometimes. Yeah, have you found that to be the case?
Yes, that's a wonderful point. Yes, I found that. But I also found if you let yourself go and free associate to what you're writing, that's like being on the couch. That's like being on the couch, You write what's coming to your mind. And the thing is, you never know where it's going to take you.
Right, right.
That's the wonderful thing about creativity, whether it's sculpting or writing or your short story, whatever you may be writing, is that you write, let yourself go. You never know where you're going to end up.
Right. I like that.
Isn't that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
So what about your interest in dreams? Where does that come from? How does that fit in with everything?
Well, we all dream, or most of us are aware of the dream. Some people dream but not aware of it. But a dream is a way of getting more into who you are. It's your way of expressing something at night that you may not be able to express in the waking state. And your mind expresses it in the unconscious dream state. And that often is very valuable material for a therapist to know about, because the dreams will lead you to ways that you never expected. It's like when you're writing something creatively, you let yourself go and you write, oh my God, I didn't know I felt this way, or I didn't know she felt this way. And you're making this up, but you're kind of creating an experience for yourself that you never knew you had. And the dreams are a little bit like that. They reflect what you may be thinking or you may be feeling, but not aware of it. And the dreams kind of brings you to the awareness of your inner life.
Do you have to have a certain level of self-awareness to do that, to kind of reflect on your dreams when you wake up?
Yes, I think mindfulness is what I call mindfulness. Yeah, it's important to be kind of mindful of oneself and think about, to reflect a little bit about your life, in the life. You know, you don't have to go to therapy or be a psychologist to reflect, as you know, about yourself. But just kind of think about what happened and why did I do this, and gee, my friend was so nice to me now today. I really appreciate it. Maybe I should tell her that, that was a lovely moment we had. Thank you very much. Or, call her up. But, that really annoyed me when you insulted my husband or my child. And the engaging with people on an emotional level is very, very helpful to not just to one's development, but to a development of relationships, whether it's marital relationship, friendships, whatever.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know if you've read about that longitudinal Harvard study about happiness and well-being, and that one of the single most important aspects is connection with people.
Yes.
Even over the coffee counter or a passing hello to a nun in the street, that these, and then on up to the peeling the onion back type of situations.
Yes, that's a wonderful point. Yes.
And I feel like the nexus of your work is that relationship building or feeling the connection with those around you.
You're really identifying the essence of therapy and the essence of just relationships in general. But in therapy, the essence is relationships. Your relationship with the patient and the patient's relationship with their world, whether it's children, husband, lovers, friends, whatever. That is the key for to a satisfying and happy existence, relationships.
Amen.
Amen.
So we are at the end. And now it did go quick. And now the final question is, and you might have already answered it, how would you, if you had one little piece of advice given for free of how people could move their Moxie needle, just one little click in some area, what would you suggest? I
have to quote Henry Miller, who said, I'm sure I'm misquoting him, but said, go to cemetery and listen. What do you think you'll be hearing? You go to a cemetery and you hear, live, live, live.
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
I don't think we need to say anything else. Clem, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your wisdom with us.
It has been fantastic. And I learned so much, and just listening to your stories, and survival is wonderful to hear.
And thriving.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being such a wonderful host. You really made it comfortable for me to share with you what I did, because I wouldn't just share it to anybody, obviously. And so I really appreciate your interest and the comfort you made for me to tell my story.
Well, Thorin, what'd you think of Clem?
Wow. I'm still wrapping my head around it. There were so many parts of his life story, his approach to life that I'm still processing. As I told him after we stopped recording, I've studied history for so long, and my focus had been that era too, that he lived through the Second World War. And as I said to him, it's an honor to meet him and someone who actually lived it and hear his specific story. It puts everything I studied into different perspective. And some parts of his story, I just sat and, looked at him and just took it all in. Hearing about the lengths that his mother went through for their survival, because they were in survival mode. So, we've talked with some of our other guests, when you're in a certain mode, it's not about, I have Moxie or I have strength of character, do X, Y, and Z. I'm in survival mode. So you just do. And,
right.
He didn't say that specifically, but to me, I was thinking back to some of our previous interviews and previous conversations about people just do. And his mother just did. Her leaving in the middle of the night when the Gestapo family wanted her to come with, and she, realized she had to go. Just making these decisions that were literally life and death.
Yeah. I'd like to see a book about his mother. I'm hoping that's in the pipeline.
I'd read it.
I would too. Also the work around, that defines his kind of therapeutic model about relationships.
Yes. And connections.
Super important. And so it was good to just be reminded of that, how important it is to have people in your life and cultivate relationships from the most surface to the deepest, having those connections. And what do you think about what he thought about the comments about shame?
I never thought of it in that perspective, but the way he described it and talked about it from his perspective, it made complete sense. And it made me kind of go, okay. I view these situations that, maybe I've seen or lived through myself and, view them differently through that lens. But I thought that was extremely fascinating, and how that can completely sculpt your life.
Yeah.
And for him, of course, that time when he's 4, 5, 6 years old and living through that in the convent, not being with his mother, having lost his father, their whole country upside down, and having to hide. That's such an impressionable age that,
right.
That, what do they say, from age 3 to 10 is basically that the majority of your personality is being shaped. So for him, having to hide himself constantly and, having, as you said, self-worth and, all these things, how can it not affect him? So viewing it from that perspective, I thought was fascinating. And I was thinking of other people that I know, like, I wonder if that is something that drives them, because it is a driver. It's not necessarily, a positive one, but it certainly affects your character and how you react and how you do things and, your decision making.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me think of the distinction between shame and guilt, where guilt is, I think, where you feel bad about something that you did, whereas shame, there's something fundamentally wrong with who you are.
Right.
And that feeling of being less than, as he said, it takes a lifetime. He's still working on it. Yeah. So kudos to Clem, and it was a great episode.
It was fantastic. And it just reminds you of humanity.
Yeah.
And the things that people go through, and to not judge a person by just one encounter. You have no idea what they've gone through.
Absolutely.
And there's always something more underneath, and just be a good person.
Love it.
All right, Mary. Well, until next time.
Next time, Thorn. This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Associated Lightning Rod and Thorin Designs.